Imagine you didn't talk much, but instead communicated to others with patterns on your face and on your arms, or you made shape changes to try and express your feelings. Welcome to the mesmerizing world of Cuttlefish, where communication is an art form and survival is a game of deception. I'm going to try and translate a few bits of Cuttlefish language to try and teach the basics of cuttlefish and octopus and show how bright they are. We're going to see cuttlefish pulsating as if they were on fire, shape-shifting and colour-changing, and even mimicking other sea creatures, like hermit crabs. I'm John Riven and I make films about the sea, including working on both series of The Blue Planet. As you probably know, cuttlefish are mollusks, which means they are distantly related to things like garden snails. But there doesn't seem to be much similarity because what amazing brains and vision they have. There must have been some strong reasons, like very fast visual predators, to become like this, because they're soft-skinned, tasty snacks for many predators like seals, dolphins, seabirds, even some of their own kind, or big fish. So they had to evolve very clever ways to avoid becoming food, and also to notice and communicate with each other in the sometimes cloudy coastal waters that they live in. Let's start with the Atlantic cuttlefish, Sepia officialis, the common cuttlefish. This species has a default black and white zebra pattern, but it can change rapidly depending on the situation. These changes are made possible by specialized cells in their skin called chromatophores, which can expand or contract to alter the color and pattern. There's also a few passive mirror-like cells embedded in the skin that just reflect the background too. Scientists have spent decades decoding the complex visual signal of these creatures to show how they use their skin to communicate, hypnotize their prey, defend themselves, and to use camouflage to become all but invisible. These scientists made what are called ethnograms, a catalogue of color, texture, and body shape changes. They found there were at least 87 color, shape, and texture changes in all in the common cuttlefish. They also found a similar repertoire in other cuttlefish like the Pharaoh cuttlefish from the coastal waters of Okinawa in Japan. In other words, cuttlefish have plenty to play with in their dictionary when it comes to communication. Although many studies have documented the many possible body color and shape change, sadly that doesn't easily translate into what these communications actually mean. What are the cuttlefish saying? But a few of these changes are reasonably obvious, and I've come across many myself diving, so let's go through some of the commonly known signals and see what we can make of them. I promise you will at least be able to say "go away" in cuttlefish, for which there's a universal gesture not that dissimilar from what we have in humans. Let's look at some of the most obvious communication that involved with courtship and finding a mate. These are European or common cuttlefish, found along coasts in the eastern Atlantic. In the UK you can see them in shallow water when they come up in the spring to mate off the south coast of England, in places like Babbacombe in Devon. Curiously, there aren't any cuttlefish like these on the east coast of the USA, even though it's the same Atlantic. The ones reported sometimes off Florida are likely Caribbean reef squid, and that's because there are no wild cuttlefish in the Americas as far as I know. So I'll take you through some of the main parts of their visual code and what we know about. In courtship, the males tell other males to back off by making an intense zebra pattern, which is also attractive to females. When they have found a female, they gently keep their front arms over her to guard her. Some species have a very sophisticated strategy to deal with other males. They can split their body pattern, and on one side, nearest the female, they show the attractive zebra stripe, but on the other side, nearest their rival males, they show a mottled pattern, which is similar to the females. It's like they're saying, there's nothing to see here, and it greatly reduces the chances of a fight with other males, which does happen of course, but mostly if a male guards his mate in the right way, it pays off, and they get it together. Cuttlefish use pulsating patterns in at least two ways. There's a subtle one called the passing cloud, which is used by the male to attract a female. Then there's a faster, stronger pulse which is used in catching prey, and it's thought to hypnotize the prey long enough for it to be snatched by the cuttlefish's elastic feeding tentacles. In some species which have a basic red pattern, like the flamboyant cuttlefish from Indonesia, this just looks like flames spreading down the side of the cuttlefish. It's really spectacular. To mimic something, you usually have to be very smart, because it shows you understand other beings and what they're about. Cuttlefishes are masters of it, as are octopus, which you can see in the video on mimic octopus here on Induna. One of the most obvious mimics that cuttlefish do is very simple. They just produce two eye spots on their back, and they flatten themselves to look like a large fish when they're threatened. But they also know when to do it, because if there's a very large prey, like a seal or something, they know it's no good just to show eye spots, and it's time to run, well, swim off as fast as they can. Although it's a clever trick, there are quite a few creatures in nature that use the same thing. Like butterflies, you probably know some of them have eye spots, and there's even moths that have lizard eyes on their wings. Recently, another fantastic mimic behaviour was spotted in cuttlefish. The Pharaoh cuttlefish uses all its skills in colour and shape changing to pretend that it's a little hermit crab, even bending its legs to make joints like a crab has and balling itself up to look like the shell of a hermit crab. This way it can sneak up on its victims, which are not usually too bothered by what seems to be a harmless hermit crab. As you know by now, cuttlefish are past masters of camouflage, picking up on their surroundings and matching colour, shading and texture very precisely. A lot of their colour changes are to do with camouflage, but no one knows exactly how they do it because they can't see themselves against the background in a top view, of course. Although recently, sensitive optical chemicals have been found in their skin, which probably give them some feedback, and that together with parts that they can see with their own eyes helps them complete the trick. In the quite cloudy coastal waters they live in, where a lot of the time it's really only shading that matters. Another interesting pattern for camouflage is the saddle pattern, which appears as a band across the back of the cuttlefish. This helps break up the shape of the cuttlefish, as the saddle could be a whole other creature. It's also quite surprising if it suddenly appears. So we're learning about their language all the time, and most recently some male cuttlefish have been found to use ink clouds as part of their courtship display. It's normally thought that inking is a deterrent for predators, but this is the first time it's been used as a kind of courtship. The male cuttlefish makes a cloud of ink and then bursts through it in a very dramatic entrance which is supposed to impress the female. The visual language of cuttlefish is a complex and fascinating system of communication, as you can see. From zebra stripes to mesmerizing hunting patterns, these creatures use their remarkable abilities to interact with their environment and each other. There's ongoing research into trying to understand the meaning of these patterns, their language, as we gain a deeper appreciation of the intelligence of cuttlefish and their relatives, the octopus and the squid. Some even think they are so extraordinary that they may have had a helping hand from viruses that infected them from outer space. But that's a far out story, and I'll cover it another time here on Induna. And what's that gesture, like the one we use, that I was talking about earlier? It's a universal sign meaning politely, go away, don't bother me. When a diver comes too near or they're threatened, cuttlefish raise their two front arms above their head in a classic V shape, common to all species. Divers sometimes use the same V with their fingers to greet the cuttlefish as a sign of peace, but perhaps they've got the wrong end of the stick.